Hacking web applications. Now in hacking web application we have different type of web app threats. In those web app threats we have cross-site scripting and we have this cross-site request forgery. This is cross-site request forgery attack. In this cross-site request forgery attacks exploit web pages vulnerabilities that allow an attacker to force an unsuspecting user's browser to send malicious requests they did not intend. The victim user holds an active session with a trusted site and simultaneously visits a malicious site which injects an HTTP request for the trusted site into the victim's user session, compromising its integrity. That means it is very simple. When normal user logs into the trusted sites and create a session, so these are suppose the trusted sites we have. So normal user logs into those trusted site and create the session. So store now when you create the session, then what happened? Your browser. So your browser stores the cookie, the session ID, like session identification and all. It is going to be saved into your system. So store the session identifier for the session in the cookie in the web browser, and it is going to store into the user's web browser. Now attacker do what? Visits a malicious sites. Attacker sends a malicious link to this user which is already logged into the normal and trusted sites. At the same time, attacker will do what? It will send the link for the malicious website and it will lure the user to click on that link. Now when user click on that link, it will go to the malicious sites and sends a request from the user's browser using this session cookie. That means it will do what? It will send a link, and in that link it is crafted with the different type of codings, like it will craft with this link, it will craft with the coding, and that when it clicks on that link, so it will try to inject a request from the user's browser because it is already having a session running. So it will do what? In the session, using the user's authenticated session, it will inject the malicious code. So because the user is already logged in and the session is already created, at that same time when the user clicks on that malicious link, so that link will do what? It will inject the malicious code into the trusted server, and it will add that code and execute that code on behalf of this normal user. So it is called cross-site request forgery. That means it is doing the request in behalf of this normal user, and the request is a malicious code. So that code will be executed on this trusted site, and it can do what? It depends on the code which attacker create. So what it will do? It depends on the code the attacker creates. So how it works? Very simple. In a simple form, user logs into the trusted server using its credential. Then user sets a session cookie in the user browser. So the cookie it will get in the browser. Now attacker will do what? Attacker will send a phishing mail tricking user to send a request to a malicious site. So it will send the link, it will like a phishing mail, it will send to the user and it will trick the user to click on this on that link. Now when the user click on that link, that response page contains the malicious code. So it will actually click on that link and the link will go to the malicious server here which is created by the attacker, and on that server when it sends the response, it sends the response with the malicious code. Now the code depends what code the attacker has designed. Now that code which is coming from this malicious server, it is going to be executed on the trusted server. That means malicious code is executed in the trusted server and it is executed on behalf of this user because the user has already created the session. So because the session is already running, so using that session it will inject a malicious code into the trusted server. Now the code, the thing which will happen on the server, it will be depending on the code the attacker has designed. Then we have web application denial of service attack. Now denial of service attack is very simple. It is like denying the server to provide the services. Very simple. When the server is a web server, so the attack will do what? It will prevent the server to provide web services or web application. So attackers exhaust available server resources by sending hundreds of resource intensive requests, such as pulling out large image files or requesting dynamic pages that require expensive search operations on the backend database servers. Application level denial of service attack emulate the same request syntax and network level traffic characteristic as that of the legitimate clients, which makes it undetectable by existing denial of service protection measures. So these denial of service attacks do what? It sends the request which look like the legitimate. It is same as the legitimate request like normal clients will send. Only the request is very large or resource intensive that will make the server or make the web application to work very hard to get the data from the database server and all, and making it go slow, and then finally not available. Why are applications vulnerable? First, reasonable use of expectations. Then application environment bottlenecks, implementation flaws and poor data validation. So reasonable use of expectation, that means attacker, the server administrators or application administrators have decided like these expectation, like we will get this amount of requests and we can process these amount of requests, and the attacker send lots of too many of that, like more than what they have expected. Application environment bottlenecks can be in the network where you are having a small way or a small suppose we say we have a 1 GB link on the one side, on the server side, but on the client side we have only on the switch side or on the router side we have 10 GB link, so it will become bottleneck. So it can be an application environment or bottlenecks where we have a big backend, but the data is going only from the single root or small root. A window of getting the data is very small. Implementation flaws can be there. Application is not properly implemented, or poor data validation. Poor data validation can lead to lots of different attacks also. Targets are CPU, memory and sockets. So attacker targets the CPU and RAM and sockets so that it will use all the resources. Disk bandwidth. Then disk bandwidth, that means whatever the disk read and write speed, so it is try to put lots of load on that. Database bandwidth, that means the way the speed, the bandwidth it is connecting the database server and connecting back to the server application. Then worker processes. In the server, in the web applications, we have different processes running, so these are also can be the target. Examples of these denial of service attack. First, user registration denial of service. In this, the attacker could create a program that submits the registration form repeatedly, adding a large number of suspicious users to the application. Like suppose this is some of the site which is registering the users. So like suppose we go to the Facebook and we create an account. So what we do, we register the account. So we do the registration. Same as we have different sites where we do the registrations. So attacker can do what? It can create a program which can submit the registration forms repeatedly, like in a 1 minute 1,000 requests. So it can do large number of suspicious users. It can send the application. It can add those users into the registration. Login attacks. In this, the attacker may overload the login process by continually sending login requests that requires the presentation tier to access the authentication mechanism, rendering it unavailable or unreasonable, slow to respond. That means attacker will do what? It will try to send different users name and different password, whether they are there or not. It is only sending a request for logging. with different usernames and different passwords, and doing that it will put a load on the authentication mechanism. So every time when you get the authentication request, login request, our web application will try to access the authentication server to make sure that the user is there or not, and then whether is user there, so allow or not, it is have to make sure the user is authenticating or not. So it will put the load on the authentication mechanism. Then user enumeration, that means in this, if application states which part of the user name password pair is incorrect, an attacker can automate the process of trying common usernames from a dictionary file to enumerate the user of the application. In this attack, attacker will try to find out the username, because attacker don't know what is the username there. So it will try to find out that what is the usernames, what are the usernames there in the server available to authenticate. So it will try to use common usernames, and it will try to use this common username as a dictionary file, and it will try to use every name. Sometime you will get the error said username and password not correct, username and password not correct, username and password not correct. And if suppose sometime attacker gets the error saying password is incorrect, that means username is right. So it can do the user enumeration attack to find out the user. Then account lockout attacks. The attacker may enumerate usernames and attempt to authenticate to the site using the username and incorrect password, which will lock out the user account after the specified number of failed attempts. So if the attacker knows the proper username, so it can do this account lockout attack also. It will use the username and try to use the incorrect password. Now when it typed incorrect password too many times or unspecified number of time, then what, the user account will be locked, and that genuine user is also not able to log in itself, and then it has to unlock the user account. Then we have buffer overflow attacks. In this buffer overflow, what happened, this buffer overflow occurs when an application writes more data to a block of memory or buffer than the buffer is allocated to hold. That means when you design any application, when developers design the applications for those applications, those data, they allocate the memory space for those data to run, memory space from the RAM. So when the application executes, so the process they have a unique memory, or they have a limited memory for that particular process. Now what this buffer overflow attack do, it will try to write more data to a block of memory, or we can say the buffer, then the buffer is allocated to hold. It enables an attacker to modify the target process addresses space in order to control the process execution, crush the process, and modify the internal variables also. Attacker modify functions pointers to direct program execution through a jump or call instruction and point to the location in the memory containing malicious code. So it can do what? It can overflow the buffer by sending or writing more data than the block or memory of that buffer allocated. So suppose the buffer is allocated with the 1 MB data. So attacker will do what? It will send 10 or 20 MB data in that buffer. Now it is only having 1 MB space allocated to that process. So what happened? The rest of the data will go overflow. It will go overflow, and when it goes overflow, so sometimes these applications do what? If they have not designed properly, so it will execute directly those codes which is not coming onto this memory. Like 1 MB is already full. Now whatever the data is coming, so it is not going to fit into that buffer, so it is going to overflow and execute directly. And execute directly, that means attacker do what? First it overflow the buffer with the junk values, and then after the buffer is overflow, then it will send the malicious code. Now when the malicious code comes, because it is not able to go into the buffer or store into the buffer, because of the overflow problem, the codes will not be we can say it will not be validated, and it will directly execute. and it will execute directly on the system. Now it depends what code the attacker is sending. So it can send the direct program execution also. It can send a direct program execution. It can send point to the location in the memory. It can instruct the and point to the location of the memory which is containing the malicious code. So it can do lots of things when it does the buffer overflow. It can control the process execution. It can crash the process and modify the internal variables also. Now if you see this code is vulnerable to buffer overflow. This is the code, example of the code which is vulnerable to buffer overflow. So because of this code, it can do buffer overflow. Then cookie or session poisoning. This is also a threat for applications, web applications. Cookies are used to maintain session state in the otherwise stateless HTTP protocol. So cookies are to maintain the state. Modify the cookie content. That means cookie poisoning attacks involves the modification of the content of a cookie. That is, personal information is stored in a web user computer, in a web user's computer in order to bypass the security mechanism. Attacker can also inject the malicious content. Poisoning allows an attacker to inject the malicious content, modifying the user's online experience and obtain the unauthorized information. Rewrite the session data. In this a proxy can be used for rewriting the session data, displaying the cookie data, and or specifying a new user ID or other session identifiers in the cookie. So basically cookies do what it keeps the session information like what is the it is like maintain the session state. So when we connect the sessions, all the session information will be stored into that cookie. So attacker can modify the cookie content and it can inject the malicious content into it to do the unauthorized information, to get the unauthorized information, and can also modify the cookie to bypass the security mechanism. Then it can also rewrite the session ID, session data, that is cookie. For that it will use the proxy like ZAP, OWASP, ZAP. It is like Burp Suite. It will use those things to first it has to be in the middle. That means it will do the man in the middle attack. Then it will run the Burp Suite software, and those Burp Suite software do what they create a proxy. Now whatever request go, when suppose the user is sending the request to the server, it will go first the attacker machine, and in the attacker machine, by the help of those Burp Suite type of software, attacker can see the request and it can modify the request, and it will modify the request. That means it will rewrite the session data and send it to the server. For that it can rewrite the user ID or it can rewrite the session identifier also. So how this cookie poisoning works? So very simple. What attacker do? First, suppose user browse a web page. Now web server do what? Web server replies with the requested page and sets a cookie on the user's browser. For example, this is the request and this is the response, and with that it is sending the cookie information here. Now attacker steals the cookie by doing sniffing, cross-site scripting, phishing attack. Like it can do these type of different attacks, or it can do the sniffing. It sits in the middle, it comes man in the middle and do the sniffing. By sniffing it will steal the cookie, or it can do the cross-site scripting attack to get this cookie, or it can do the phishing attack. So phishing attack, that means it will send the targeted mail with the malicious code to this user, and in that code it has information to steal the cookie. Like while the user is logged in, session is running, at the same time attacker will send the phishing mail with the malicious code, and when the user clicks on that link, it will steal the cookie of the current session. Now when the attacker gets the session cookie, attacker order for a product using modified cookie. So it will do what? It will see the cookie and then it will do what? It will order to the server, order to the web server, order to the product using the modified cookie. So it is using the same cookie, that means it is having the identifier of this user, it is using the same session ID, it is using the same thing, only it is modifying this order product, like it is modifying the request like items and items number and total price. And then what product is delivered to the attacker's address, it is changing the address, it is changing the other information, and just it is sending that information and order, and or we can say the order to the server and using the session ID of this user. So the server feels like it is using this user is ordering something, only the address is different. Then session fixation attack. Now to get the, in order to get the session ID, it is attacker can do a different attacks, it can do the sniffing, it can do the prediction also, and that is very difficult sometimes. So attacker can do what, it can use the session fixation attack. So instead of guessing the session ID, it will use the session fixation attack. In a session fixation attack, the attacker tricks the user to access a genuine web server using an explicit session ID, a session ID value. An attacker assumes the identity of the victim and exploits his credential at the server. So what attacker will do? Attacker logs into the bank website using his credential. Then web server sets a session ID on the attacker's machine. Now attacker sends an email containing a link with a fixed session ID. So again it will send the phishing mail to the user with the fixed session ID, where the session ID will be fixed. That means if this user logs in, so it will logs in with this fixed session ID. Now the session ID is fixed by the attacker, so attacker knows what is the session ID. It does not have to do anything else to get the session ID. So it does not have to do the phishing or sniffing or anything. It knows the session ID here. Now if the user clicks on that link, so user clicks on that link and is redirected to the bank site. It will be redirected to the bank site. Now user logs onto the server using his credential and fix the session ID. So it will use, this user will use his own user ID and credentials and logs into the server. Now when it is logged in, but it is using the session ID which is fixed by the attacker, and attacker knows what is the session ID. Now attacker will do what? Attacker logs onto the server using the victim's credential with the same session ID. Now attacker don't have to do the don't have to provide the credential, it is already provided by this user. It will do what? It will use the session ID of that user and it will hijack the session of this user. So instead of guessing the session ID, attacker can fix the session ID and that session ID will be used by the attacker. Then we have CAPTCHA attacks. This CAPTCHA is used to prevent automated software from performing action that degrades the quality of service of a given system. Remember the denial of service attack we talked about. In the denial of service attack, I have said that user will send the lots of forms for the registration with the different usernames. Like if it is a site where you are registering a user and it is registering the user, so attacker can create a software and automate the process and then it will fill the form of the registration by the application, automated application, and try to submit the request for creating the account or registering the account. Now it can do that by, suppose it is doing that by using some application, so it can do what? It can do even 1000, it can do submit 1000 applications within a minute. Now what servers do? Servers use this CAPTCHA option. This CAPTCHA option used to prevent these automated softwares to do this type of denial of service attack or try to automate the registration process. So whenever you try to go to try to register yourself with some sites, so by the registration form, when you register the form, you will fill the information about you, and with that all information, at the end of that you will have to provide the CAPTCHA. So they put the CAPTCHA there. So when you fill the form, the CAPTCHA comes randomly, so random numbers with letters, something like this, or sometimes it is images also. So you have to write those specific words or characters into the CAPTCHA, and then only you can submit. Otherwise, when your CAPTCHA is not right, then you will not able to submit your form. So by doing this, they prevent the automated software. So if suppose someone is trying to use the automated software to submit the request 1,000 times, then it will not able to, because every time the CAPTCHA will be different. Now it aims to ensure that the user of applications are human and ultimately aid in preventing unauthorized access and abuse. So it will try to see, or it will basically checking that for the person who is filling the form is human, not a robot, or not an application who is automatically filling the forms. Now however, this attacker can compromise the security of the web application by exploiting the vulnerabilities existed in CAPTCHA. Type of CAPTCHA attack we have actually: breaching client-side trust, manipulating server-side implementation, and attacking the CAPTCHA image. These are the different attacks we have on CAPTCHA that attacker can do. Then we have insufficient transport layer protection. This is also a threat. So it comes when suppose the weak algorithm. Now transport layer protection is the security layer where data will be protected. Now but if this supports the weak algorithm, that means insufficient transport layer protection supports weak algorithm and uses expired or invalid certificates. So because we are using this, the web servers or web applications use this transport layer protection to protect the communication, and to do the communication encryption they use the certificates. But if it is using the weak algorithm or it is using the expired or invalid certificates, then it will not be secure. Then also launch attacks. Underprivileged SSL setup can also help the attacker to launch phishing and man-in-the-middle attacks also. Exposes the data also. So if it is not secure, so this vulnerability exposes users' data to untrusted third parties and can lead to account theft also. Then improper error handling. Improper error handling gives insight into source code such as logic flows, default accounts, etc. Using the information received from an error message, an attacker identifies the vulnerabilities for launching various web application attacks. Now improper error handling means when you try to access some server, and if the server is giving error, now those errors must be properly handled by the application developer. Otherwise it can reveal sensitive information about the technology, about the system, about the server, about the directory structure also. So information gathered with this improper error handling is like null pointer exceptions, system call failure, database unavailable, network timeout, database information, web application logical flaws, application environment. So these all with the information gathered here. So when suppose you try to access some site and you put some name there. For example, I will show you one. Suppose this is a genuine site, facebook.com. I went to this. Now I will put here slash, and I want to get a directory here. I'm putting a name of the directory here, password. Now this directory name is not there. I'm sure it is not there, but I want to see the error. Now this is what the error here. Now what this error is saying here, it is saying it is not there, like what you are looking for, it is not there. Now this error is actually custom made error, it is not a default error. So if suppose error happens and the application developer is not properly handling the errors, so what happen if suppose somebody try to access some pages which is not available? So then what happen? and what error should be shown. Now if it is not properly handled, then what it will show? It will show a detail about the server. It will show the detail about the server. It will show the other things about the server. Let's check on this side. Now here I will also try to put something, and it is showing 404 error. Now again, what we are seeing here, it is also a custom made error. You can see this is the normal error we see. So when you do access some of the sites like this, you will see this type of custom error. This site is configured on my Windows machine, my own server. Now what? It is the XAMPP server. It is actually Apache server. Now suppose if I try to access with some different directory, let's say I will try to access data. Now what? This is not a custom. This is not a custom error. Now what it is showing here, you can see here it is talking. Here it is showing that this is Apache 2.4.46 server on Windows, and is using OpenSSL this, PHP version this. This is the server IP, and this is the port number of server. So it is showing the information about the server in the error. It is a not found error. It is a normal error. With that error, because it is not configured, the error is not configured, so it is showing the default error. So with the default error, it is showing the information about the server. So not only this, it can show lots of other informations also. So these are the improper error handling. So it can be other problems also. It can be network timeout, database informations problem, application environment problem. So whatever the problem comes, it has to be managed or properly handled in the application. And if it is not handled, then you can see in the image it is showing detailed information about the server. Then insecure cryptographic storage also. Insecure cryptographic storage refers to when an application uses poorly written encryption code to securely encrypt and store sensitive data in the database. These flows allow an attacker to steal or modify weakly protected data such as credit cards numbers, SSNs, and other authentication credentials. So if suppose we are using the developer has designed the application, but it is using the weak algorithm or less cryptography algorithm, it is using the encryption algorithm, which is can be easily recoverable or reversible, and by using that it is encrypting the data on the database, so it is not that secure. It can be decrypted, and it can be used, it can be seen by the attacker. So if you are configuring the data, so it must be encrypted properly. Otherwise what happen? Attacker can steal the data. If it is hardly encrypted, it is using encrypted coded, or application is using the proper or good encryption, then even the user or attacker get the data, it is no use for them. But if it is poorly encrypted, then attacker will steal the data and then it can easily decrypt it. So this is like a vulnerable code where it is using plain text, and this is the secure code where it is not using the plain text, it is using the encryption algorithm here to encrypt the data. Then broken authentication and session management. An attacker uses vulnerabilities in the authentication or session management functions such as exposed accounts, session IDs, logout, password management, timeouts, remember me, or secret questions, account updates, and other to impersonate user. So attacker do what? It can impersonate the other user by using the session ID of that user, and then it can use the password management, timeouts, remember me, and secret question also, and update the account update also. So session ID in URL, if the URL is showing the session ID, so attacker sniff the network traffic or tricks the user to get the session ID and reuse the session IDs for malicious purpose. That is what session fixation or session hijacking. Then password exploitation, in this attacker gain the access to the web application's password database. If user passwords are not encrypted, the attacker can exploit every user's password. That means if it is not stored, data is not stored in the cryptography, then it can be easily theft by the attacker. Timeout exploitation, that means if an application's timeouts are not set properly and a user simply close the browser without logging out from the site access through a public computer, the attacker can use the same browser later and exploit the user's privilege. That means when sometime we do like this, we go to the site, we log in, we do something or we do everything, and then we don't log out, we just close the browser. Now if the application is not properly configured to do the timeout, like expire the session after the proper timeout, or if suppose you if you even close the browser, then it will expire the session. And if it is not doing that, that means what, you will just close the browser, you feel like we have disconnected, but your session will be running on the same browser in the same machine. Attacker can go to that machine, because if it is a public machine, so attacker can also access the machine, and it will try to use the same browser on the same machine to use your same session which is already running. Then invalidated redirects and forwards. In this invalidated redirects enable attacker to install malware or trick victims into disclosing password or other sensitive information, whereas unsafe forwards may allow access control bypass. That means invalidated redirects. In this, attacker do what? Attacker sends an email containing rewrite link to a malicious server. So when the user clicks on that link, that means it is like a link, it is saying redirect to this malicious sites. Now when the user click on that link, so user will be redirected to the attacker's server. This is the redirection. Now when user is on the attacker's malicious server, then the malicious codes, malicious application can be loaded into the attacker's the victim's machine. Then invalidated forwards means attacker request page from the server with the forward. So it will send the request to the server with the forwards. Now the attacker is forwarded to admin page. So it will forward it to the admin page. That means it will send the request like it says the forward is equal to admin page. Now the page will run on the server and it says the admin page, and attacker will see the administrator's page. Then web services. This is the architecture of web services, where we have the services like HTTP, that is not this is a TCP channel, fast info set, etc. whatever. Then we have the documentation technology like XML, SOP, VSDL, schema, Windows Service, advertisings. In that we have Windows Server securities. In this we have WS security policies, we have WS federation, secure conversation, trust, encryption. Then we have Kerberos security token profiles. We can use as SAM file. We can use Kerberos, or we can use a certification X.509 and digital signature. These are security, and with that we have security policies. Then Windows policy, Windows Server policies, and then Windows Server work process. These are different processes we have for the web server. That is the web service architecture. Now web service attacks. Web service evolutions and its increasing use in business offers new attack vectors in an application framework. So web services are based on XML protocols such as Web Service Definition Language, WSDL, for describing the connection points. Now universal description, discovery and integration, UDDI, for the description and discovery of web services, and simple object access protocol, SOAP, for communication between web services which are vulnerable to various web application threats. So in this web services stack, we have transport layer, access layer, discovery layer, security layer and presentation layer. In this we have transport layer of HTTP, HTTPS, JMS, etc. Then we have access layer where we have the SOAP and reset, REST. Then discovery layer we have UDDI, WSDL. Then security layer we have WS securities. Then we have web services security. Then we have presentation layer where we have XML, AJAX, portal, others. Now in these layers we have different attacks. In the presentation layer we can have parameter tampering, WSDL probing, SQL, LDAP, XPath, OS command injection, malware injection, brute force, data type mismatch, content spoofing, session tampering, format string, information leakage. Then in the discovery layer we have fault code leaks, permission and access attacks, error leakage, authentication and certification attacks. In access layer we have buffer overflow, XML parsing, spoiling schema, complex or recursive payloads, denial of service attack, large payloads. Then in transport layer we have sniffing, snooping, Windows web services, routing, replay attack, denial of service attacks. So depend on these services of web, these layers of web services, we have these different attacks. Now web services footprinting attack. First, attackers footprint a web application to get UDDI information such as business entity, business service, binding template and T model. So it can see the request or replies from the server. So XML query, if it is XML, so it will be like this, the required the query will be like this, or if it is XML response, so it will be like this. So it will send the query like this and it will get the response like this, where it can find what is the different information here. In the response it can see the detail about the server. To get this response it will send this query. To see this request and query, attacker can do this by using the Bob Suite or other proxy tools. So web service XML poisoning. Now in this, attacker insert malicious XML codes in SOAP request to perform XML node manipulation or XML schema poisoning in order to generate errors in XML parsing logic and break execution logic. Then attacker can manipulate XML external entity reference that can lead to arbitrary file or TCP connection opening and can be exploited for other web services attack. Then XML poisoning enables attacker to cause a denial of service attack and compromise the confidential information. This is the normal XML request and this is the poisoned XML request. So attacker will do what? If suppose it is normal XML request, so it will poison the XML request by this extra information. Like for example, it is saying first name Jason, we have to get. Now in this it is adding one more thing like customer number also, and also first name Jason here. So it is adding the extra information code here to poison the XML coding. Now these are the web application threats we have. We have these different threats of web applications.